Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrived by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 212, we sit down with Mike and Isabel Osinski, founders of Widows Hole Oyster Farm in Greenport, before launching one of North Fork's most recognized oyster operations. Both Mike and Isabel spent years working on Wall Street, careers far removed from the working waterfront they would one day call home. Drawn to the North Fork's beauty, community, and slower pace, they eventually settled in Greenport, where the historic Widows Hole Cove sparked an unexpected new chapter. With little direct aquaculture experience, both shared a sense of curiosity and purpose. They began farming oysters, and soon gained attention for the distinctive character and quality of their Widows Hole oysters. In our conversation, Mike and Isabel talk about the careers they left behind, how Widows Hole Oyster Co. began, and how the business has evolved as more oyster farms have appeared across Long Island. We also discuss the crucial importance of clean water for the future of aquaculture and the North Fork, and their hopes for the community they've become a part of. So I hope you enjoy episode 212 with Mike and Isabel Osinski. This episode was recorded July 16th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. I'm looking forward to talking to you both.
Oh, thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, Christopher.
We're
happy to be here.
Thank you. And so just in the beginning, I usually like to ask for people that come on if you can give a little introduction about yourself and where you were born and raised.
I'm Michael Osinski. I was born in Mobile, Alabama, 1954. And when I was 10, we moved to Cocoa, Florida. My dad worked at NASA, at the Cape Canaveral. So I was raised in the 60s in that whole Space Center environment, and went to college in Tallahassee. Met my wife there. We got married, a few years later, and then spent some time working in software in Florida, and then came up to New York in the early 80s and worked on Wall Street in a software capacity.
Mm-hmm.
We worked on Wall Street for about 4 or 5 years, then opened our own software company. And I had partners in Boston, so that's why we always liked to bike. That's why we moved to the North Fork. Mm-hmm. We actually got thrown off the train because it was rush hour, and they told us we couldn't take our bikes to the Hamptons. So we ended up in Greenport, which is beautiful. The water's so beautiful and clean. That's why we bought the place, because our partners from Boston, we commuted.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we had partners. So it was easy to get to Boston in the water. We loved to swim, and we could swim. So we bought this house on the Widows Hole in Greenport. Mm-hmm. And that was 1999. And then in 2000, our partners bought us out. And we were suddenly retired in our mid-40s, and we had 2 little children. And then in 2001, we discovered by accident that we owned 5 acres underwater. Mm. And we knew the local history that oystering had been a very big industry here for 100 years, from 1860 to 1960. And at that time, there was 1 or 2 old timers growing oysters. We decided, it's a great way to raise kids instead of the Manhattan rat race would be to raise them on a farm. So we got permits to start an oyster farm, and we are totally enslaved by that romantic notion of because now we work all the time.
Yes. But you said you came out in 1999.
Yeah.
Well, what did you think of the area out here, even, I guess, comparing it to the South Fork at that time? Was it more rural? Or?
Yeah, it was more agricultural, more easier to get to, less frenetic. We rented a cottage, if you know where Breezy Shores there is. So we one of those were all, they were abandoned at that time. And we had rented a cottage for, 4 years. And then decided to buy as soon as we saw this house in Greenport. It had been empty and for sale for years. Nobody wanted it. And it's just a beautiful peninsula, an old federal house, early 1800s actually. And beautiful spot.
And the water's very clean. Before we started oyster farming, it was extensively tested, and we passed all these dye tests. So, it was, we had felt it was clean, but it truly is. It took us at least 2 years to get the permitting, maybe more.
And did you think, in terms of starting a business like that and getting to know the community and were there other people in the area started?
We learned to know our neighbors.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's a NIMBY thing.
Yeah.
So we had to sue for the right to farm.
We had to sue the village. But first, we had a twofold. One was to raise our kids. Two, maybe to make a little money. And we were, we shot films, 20-some years ago when we first started saying, we think it's good for the area to redevelop the oyster industry because, it's this beautiful bay, clean water, home to great oysters. You got the nearby markets. Should be more people growing oysters. And now there are 93 guys with oyster permits on Long Island. So, what was it, 10 years ago, we founded the Long Island Oyster Growers Association. I was the first president of that association. So it's a thriving, it's a growing industry. You see the signs everywhere now on the side of the streets, oysters for sale. Well, it wasn't like that 25 years ago.
And then just if you could comment on the village of Greenport even. I know the Mitchell Park wasn't there yet. I think that had finished in 2001 maybe.
Well, he was a trustee.
It finished in about 2006, 5 or 6.
2005.
When it was finished, I ran for trustee because the village was heavily encumbered with debt from that. There weren't as many grants as was touted, and so I ran for trustee, and we, sort of helped get the village on a sounder financial footing. But, no, the Mitchell Park didn't have it. It's just a charming location, the well-planned out village. This is a very well-planned out village. It had its own, number one, it had its own electricity, but more importantly, it had its own sewer, and that was due to the big oyster industry from over 100 years ago. Greenport was the hub of the oyster industry. They had the canneries, and you had the railroad connection. It was 8 or 10 canneries here in the village. Everywhere you see a condo today was an oyster cannery. And then you had the railroad connection to the city, and you had the Deepwater Harbor that's, better than any harbor really in Long Island, and enabled the guys to harvest oysters all year and keep the canneries running year round. It was a perfect, ideal place, and the old timers really made excellent use of what they had here to have an industry that big. 1 square mile village, 1,100 homes, but 1,500 people working in the oyster industry. What kind of what kind of planning and forethought was that? You really have to give it to them. And they didn't have hatcheries like we had. They had to gather the seed from Connecticut. There's no natural set here, and there never was. But they gathered the seed from Connecticut, brought it over here, and farmed. Quite, you really have to. The people that built this
America's
village.
Cup. Oyster farmers crewed the America's Cup and won.
Yeah, because in the mid 18 to late 1800s, all the oystering was done under sail. They spent, these Greenport men spent their life going back and forth, dragging dredges across the entire bay. So you get rid of those dredges, and those guys could fly.
But just discovering that you found that you had that land, or that
the bottom.
The bottom. Did you know right away that you wanted to start a oyster?
Well, Mike reads a lot of history. And he'd read that Greenport was once the oyster capital of the East Coast. And in fact, on September 1st, the local oyster farmer would be on the front page of the New York Times giving oysters to the president for Oysters Are in Season, which was starting in September months with R. So Mike read a lot of history, and he came up one day and said, we should start growing oysters. And I said, well, the kids are 2 and 3, 4. When they're 6, we'll move back to the city. And that was, 30-something years.
Even 25 years old.
25,
Kids
so-
grew up,
Kids grew up, we're still here.
Number one, our lawyer told us that family farms are exempt from all child labor laws. Our son was driving a boat when he was 3 years old. I am not exaggerating. It's hard to believe when I see 3-year-olds come to the farm because we do tours and people come all the time. But now he's an engineer. Went to Yale. He's an engineer at John Deere. So I think it was a good experience.
Our kids were always very highly motivated to study because they were exempt from working.
Yeah. They didn't have to go out
They were
on
like,
a
I'm
December
doing
day.
my homework.
Yeah.
I'm doing. I mean, they used to do their summer homework the same week that they got out of school, so that they would not have to work. But no, they're my daughter's in aquaculture.
Yeah.
She works at
New Hampshire and a
Fish
fish
and
hatchery.
Wildlife.
Oh, okay.
And my son was always the guy that fixed everything for us, so he's working for John Deere, which is farm equipment,
He's a mechanical
as
engineer.
a mechanical engineer. So they actually did everything but come back and farm.
They're like, well, we're moving away.
Yeah, Mom and Dad are still out there. As a matter of fact, we got to make a shipment to the city tomorrow.
Yes. And then could you talk about just starting out and getting the seeds, and where did you get your oyster seeds from?
There was an old timer around the
Dean
Yuxa was in Pipes Cove. He had a little bottom, and he was growing, I don't know, a few 50,000 oysters or something like that. And he showed us the methodology called the cage and bag method that he was using. And our software business was overlooking Union Square. So we always entertained people at Union Square Cafe, and they sold Fisher's Island oysters. And I called up Steve Malinowski over at Fisher's Island. I said, Steve, I want to, I got permits. I want to buy seed. And he sold me my first 50,000 seed over there from Fisher's Island. We bought seed from him for a long time. And, Steve's son, Pete, started the Billion Oyster Project in Manhattan, which is a very, big deal in the city now.
Mm-hmm. And how much has it grown in terms of how many oysters are you producing today compared
We're
to...
actually expanding.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but we are.
Yeah, we do about $250,000. We're a boutique, but we sell to, La Bernardin. We sell to Blue Hill at Stone Barns. We sell to... Tom Colicchio was our first customer when he was at Gramercy Tavern, and he's still our customer. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Eric Repair, right? Same thing with Dan Barber at Blue Hill.
So Greenport has excellent flush flow of water, and it also has clean water because of the sewage plant, which is unusual. You can really
it's unusual to grow so close to
shore, like in the harbor, pretty much.
And you get a good oceanic flush. There's a great current, constant.
We have hard bottom.
Yeah, hard bottom, no mud, and oysters are filter feeders. So when they're in the water, they open up, and the tide brings them algae. That's what they eat. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have any mud, and we graduated from the cage and bag method because it was too much labor, too much cleaning,
and the kids grew up.
And the kids grew up, so we didn't have free child labor anymore.
My son designed the system that we're currently using because when he got accepted to college, I'm like, you can't leave, So he designed the system that the two of us can pretty handle.
Yeah, easily. It's called the Australian longline system that uses the tides to do the major thing. Oyster farmers do, like all farmers do the same thing. It's not the romantic notion you have of farming. No, all farmers spend most of their time killing the things that kill their crop, right? And for us, that's predation in the form of sponges, tunicates, barnacles, lady slippers, scungili, the whelks, all these things. So you have to protect your oysters from these things. What do you call them? Starfish are huge predators.
Air drying, we air dry a lot.
You have to air dry because there's a pernicious sponge, a microscopic sponge up and down the East Coast called Cleona that will attack the shell and make it, so brittle that it's worthless. So you have to air dry your oysters. Putting the oyster in the air kills the sponge, but the oyster survives. Since it's a reef-building animal, it's really made to come out at low tide, and it's much healthier for the oyster to come out regularly because it removes all this predation.
Mm-hmm. And I think you mentioned the type of oyster, but are your oysters unique compared to, or describing how they're unique compared to other oyster?
Well, we're only allowed to grow the Crassistria
Virginica.
virginicus along the East Coast.
Native species.
Native species.
Okay.
So all oysters pretty much prick up their terroir and the way they're grown for differences in taste, which are unique to each grower, because every grower has a different environment, and most of them adapt to their environment. Like we've adapted to our intertidal area.
Yes.
And so even though it's the same species from the Gulf of Maine to the Gulf of Mexico, it has a pretty big difference in taste. I mean, the same species grown in Louisiana tastes much different, much different, much differently than
It's
our species, our oyster. Right?
We have a very briny, crisp taste because we have so much flush. And in Louisiana, they grow all year round, so they don't hibernate. So they're kind of fat, but
they grow faster and they grow bigger, but they're the taste isn't as crisp as the northern oyster historically always sold at a premium to the southern oyster because of the better taste. And because of concerns about Vibrio. Vibrio is a naturally occurring bacteria in the water that blooms when the water is very warm and can give you a nasty stomachache. So the southern waters are always warm, and there's almost all year round there's a Vibrio concern. We have, July and August, you may have a Vibrio concern. We've never had Vibrio, but the state forces us to work on the oysters in the shade, and when you take the oysters out for harvest, they must immediately go on ice. And they can't leave the property until they're chilled below 50, which, if there was Vibrio, again, which we've never had, it would kill the oyster. It would kill the Vibrio, and then the oysters, now cold for the restaurant.
Southern oysters are usually cooked for that because of the Vibrio, the concerns. So if you look at oysters Rockefeller or fried oysters, oyster poor boys, most of the recipes in the South are cooked.
And then at least on Long Island, you couldn't grow more west of here, closer to the city, because of the waters aren't.
No, they grow in the Great South Bay.
Oh, okay.
That's where there's a little village next to Islip called Blue Point. And Blue Point, the name for the Blue Point oysters comes from that village, because that village had a big enough freshwater stream that the oysters reproduce better at lower salinities than high salinities. And that fresh water that came into the village of Blue Point allowed them to get a natural set. So they could gather seed naturally, instead of like out here in the Peconics where they had to go to Connecticut, because, all of New England drains through Connecticut from the north to the south. And so those bays in New Haven, in Saybrook, and in New London are perfect for oyster reproduction, especially New Haven. New Haven was a big center of oysters.
The people from Greenport used to drop their shells off, and the spat baby oyster seed would collect at the mouth of the rivers, and then they would come back and dredge them up and bring them.
Remember, they had all these canneries, so there were mountains of shells here, and so they took those shells in April, dropped them in New Haven in the Quinnipiac, came back in September, and each one of those shells were covered with 20 or 30 baby spat, S-P-A-T. That's what a baby oyster is. And, their shells, I'm talking shells that are 6-8 inches. They were growing oysters for meat in that era. So they grew them 3, 4, 5 years. Whereas today, the average oyster goes at around 3.5 inches is probably the most common size. Americans like smaller oysters.
At that time, the bay was gridded off into
square miles.
And from Riverhead out to Montauk because of the hard bottom. And that's where they cast their oyster shells with spat.
The entire bay was farmed.
It was old timers told me that the tide would come in dirty and go out clean.
So many oysters.
It would just clean like a filter.
They'd filter out all that algae.
Yeah.
They filter 250, 300.
Yeah, 50 gallons for a 3-inch oyster. 300 for a 5-7-inch oyster. So the bigger they are, the better, the more filtration. And we're talking in an era when the banks in the back of the bay were lined with duck farms. full of algae, but no,
Yes.
there wasn't a problem. Full of nitrogen. They flush those duck farms into the bay, but all that nitrogen, but because of the amount of oysters, it would all clean it up.
It was very good for the environment.
And fish everywhere in the bay. Oysters are considered what's called a foundation species. So the reef provides a habitat, for small fish, birds, so the more oysters you have, and they remove excess algae from the bay. These are all two beneficial products of oyster cultivation that clean the environment and improve the amount of fish.
And we hope they taste good so people will eat them.
Yeah, exactly. And it provides it's the best source of animal protein there is for you. And it provides a occupation for local young men and women, because it's a hard job. You got to be out there all year. You want to make a living, you got to do the work. You hire people, well, it's just not going to work that well. You got to be out there doing the work, and be out there, if you have employees, be out there with them. And you don't need a college degree or anything. You just need to do the work.
Is it? Are you out there year round?
Yes.
Is it? Are you like waist high or in the water and?
At low tide, we harvest at low tide.
Oh, okay.
Other people use boats, but since we're so close to shore,
Because of the sewage.
Because of the Greenport sewer system, we can grow close to shore. We can wait out at low tide. It's still cold then in the middle of, if it's a January day, low tide's at 4 a.m, and you're in a 5 mil wetsuit with a headlamp. Because, it's 20 degrees out. You got to get those oysters, and you got to count them fast and stick them back in the water or load them into the van.
It's cold. In summary, yes, very cold.
Yeah.
This is a nice time of year. We were fixing up all our gear because we have the luxury of not freezing.
But you mentioned some of the businesses and people that you've worked with. Starting out earlier, was that hard to get people to sell your oysters to, or was it?
Surprisingly not. So there weren't very many people growing oysters on Long Island then. I don't think anybody was in Great South Bay, and there was just a couple of people out here in the Peconics, and nobody was driving them into the city themselves. Everybody at that time would sell them to a distributor who would then do the marketing. Well, we had the luxury of having an apartment in the city, so we would drive them in, and we would pitch them
Directly to the chefs.
Go right to the chefs, make an appointment, knock on the door. When I first started, there used to be a Yellow Pages. Remember that? Look up Manhattan seafood and just went through the Yellow Pages and bring them by. I remember Dave Pasternak. He was a famous seafood chef at Esca. Yeah, buddy, you called the right number. They were very receptive because, these guys want to buy local. Number one, it's typically cheaper, fresher. These guys are looking for taste. They're looking for something local, especially the best chefs. That's what they want.
They were very, very supportive because since we couldn't deliver every day and only once a week, they would work with our schedule. And sometimes, we have, come in because of the kids, we had to drop them off. So we'd come in during the service, which is unusual to make a delivery during the service. They were very nice. They used to laugh about it, but they were very nice, very supportive. Because we made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing when we started.
And Mike's got a pretty good relationship with his customers, both with the software company that we had and also the chefs. They were very pleasant about it. They're like, "What do we do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Talk to Mike."
It was so I don't know. A couple of years ago, Eric Repair was filming a video at our place. So, so we were eating oysters, and he was looking at everything. He said, Mike, these oysters are now the new method is a much better method. These are 10 times better. He said, we supported you from the first year just because. We knew you didn't grow the best oysters, but we wanted to support the local people. And now you see there's a lot of, if that couple from Wall Street with their kids can do it, anybody can do it. Now there's a nascent industry.
Yes.
It's a growing industry.
You see it continuing to grow.
Yeah, we're expanding.
There's no reason not to. It's the best. I mean, you see every restaurant in the village selling oysters all the time, and we're trying to get chefs to cook them. I'm pitching one of the chefs just this week saying, hey, we make oyster risotto at home. You've got an Italian restaurant. You should be doing
Yeah,
that.
we often, when they come over, we'll show them what we're cooking, and they seem to like it.
We eat oysters, 100 different ways. And if you were to look at a cookbook from 100 years ago, you would see 8 or 10 pages of oyster recipes, not 8 or 10 recipes, 8 or 10 pages. It was just commonly consumed in the home, cooked everywhere, and fell out of, when it all collapsed in the 60s, right, for two reasons. One, there was a disease that affects oysters called MSX. They brought a non-native species into the Chesapeake to boost production, thinking it was disease resistant, and it was. However, it carried a disease that affected the native species. So it was a big die-off. And then secondly, there was a lot of pollution. GE had a lot of factories in Connecticut, a lot of pollution in the Connecticut rivers in the 60s, so the seed source diminished. And then thirdly, in that era, as oyster production plummets, you see the rise of McDonald's. The cheap, unhealthy, the steroid-fed, the super cow, the super pig, and the super chicken, whereas it takes us 2 years to get 1 ounce of meat, or each oyster, say, is a half an ounce or something like that. They can get a 3-pound chicken from, it only takes them 5 weeks to go from a chicken egg to a chicken McNugget. So, people drifted away from eating oysters at their home, so much so that no one can remember this era from 70, 60, 70 years ago, when they were a staple of the New York diet. A staple.
Is it part of your everyday diet?
We eat 5 times a week. I'm sure we eat oysters.
Well, we're kind of lazy. Going to the grocery store is a lot of trouble, so we do eat a lot at home because it's there. We're harvesting. Oh, this one looks really good. Let's eat it. So, we
oysters and pasta, oysters risotto, fried oysters and grits. That's a breakfast, right?
Stir fry oysters with beef.
Steak.
You know how they use oyster sauce in Chinese cooking?
Yes.
We use a lot of oysters.
We use oysters, right?
And then Mike ferments.
Yeah, I ferment oysters.
He ferments oysters.
It's the Romans made something called garum. So I don't know if you know Chef Dan Barber, famous chef up in Blue Hill at Stone Barns. He's famous for fermentation. So he's been a client forever. He worked with us. He didn't like, first I fermented them, and he told me how. And then he said, sort of bland. He said, try adding the koji barley. They have a farm. It's the old Rockefeller estate. So they have this massive farm. He sent us down some koji barley, which is what they use when they brew soy sauce, and they ferment soybeans into soy sauce. So we added that, and it really has a nice flavor, and it's stable. And we give it to chefs all the time. We use it. I use it in cooking all the time. It's the Romans, Romans built garum factories. You could either use fish. You need 25% salt by volume, or fish, or you can use oysters. More expensive, but it's nicer flavor. Oysters are historically made into sauces. China's the world's largest producer of oysters. Where does it all go? Oyster sauce, right?
So he has these little vats of oysters outside in the sun. And it's like very scary. We also make oyster kimchi, which is very, very popular with people that
Asian friends come over.
Eat it up.
Their normal politeness evaporates when they see that kimchi. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take all of that.
Yes. And in terms of the name of the business, Widows Hole Oyster, how did that name come about?
The embayment next to our house, we're on a peninsula. Okay. One side's on Peconic Bay, Greenport Harbor, and the other is a creek called Widows Hole, which is a deep body of water.
It's always been called the Widows Hole here in Greenport, and we think we know why. It's because when you buy a house, you do a title search. The first name on that deed from 1820 was a woman, which was very unusual for that era. So, Greenport was a oystering town from 1860 until 1960. But prior to 1860, this was a whaling village. And we're assuming her husband, Mrs. Leveridge's husband, was a whaler that didn't, 25% of those guys did not make it back.
Well, a lot of them went to the gold rush.
Yeah, that's
They abandoned.
that's what killed the whaling industry out here, was the gold rush. So much easier to just beach your whaling boat in San Francisco and get gold. To walk up to the mountains, and it was a very hard job whaling.
Mm-hmm.
Out for 4 years, heavy seas, big animals, piracy, you name it, right?
Yes.
Scurvy, poor nutrition. That's a hard job.
Yes.
Walk into the California mountains, get some gold in your pocket. I mean, literally, the people were taking whaling boats and beaching them all over San Francisco Harbor.
Mm-hmm. And now, you mentioned you're expanding right now. Are there any other plans you have for the business, or just keep it consistent and going?
Well, maybe the kid, our daughter's often said she wants to take it over. She did study aquaculture.
She'll want to come back.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, she jumped her. Well,
there was a bad boyfriend. We're past that.
So now it's all good.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Okay.
Our son loves the place. I mean, he still comes home. He comes home 3 or 4 times a year.
And the first thing he does is make a checklist of what he needs to fix.
Well, yeah, he walks around fixing because obviously we're on the salt water, so all the hoists and all the machinery, electronics out there goes, and he's always fixing that.
He's also very helpful. I'll call him up and he'll pick up and I'm like, Mike, Dad's in the water. This thing broke. What am I supposed to do? There's a little light, blah, blah. He's very helpful with the machinery.
Yes. And then, I know you mentioned coming out here, but what do you enjoy most about living and working out here on the North Fork?
Well, you got to say the water is just
totally
clean. I mean, Greenport, because of the sewer, has the cleanest water in Suffolk County. Absolute cleanest water in Suffolk County is here in the village. Hard to believe, right? You got all these marinas and stuff. No, it's clean here. I mean, if we're not harvesting, we often swim, right?
And garden.
We garden. The soil is so fertile. So we're roses, tomatoes, you name it, right?
Well, we're really lucky because since we started growing oysters, we just saw 4 oyster catchers on our little jetty, which there were never any oyster catchers when we first started. And we have not just 1 oyster osprey nest, but 2. And also, what's really rewarding is that eelgrass, which is a protected, endangered, New York State species, is flourished under our oysters. Yes. I mean, and like yesterday, I was like, wow, it's gone from here to here. It's spreading.
We have a whole meadow, and only when we went to the surface-grown oysters on the cables on the surface, because there was never eelgrass there before. And with the cage method, we never saw it.
And we found seahorses in the eelgrass, and you see it's just amazing. It's so rewarding to see the birds and the eelgrass is. You know what they say? It's so good for it really is. I didn't think it was. I never knew anything about it, but it's really a good thing for the environment.
Yeah, the state and the county have spent millions of dollars trying to repopulate eelgrass unsuccessfully, and here it is underneath a commercial oyster venture, growing on its own, thriving and expanding. It's really a nice thing.
It's really rewarding. It kind of tickles when you walk through it, though.
Yeah. Do you see? Because I know people have talked on the podcast about the fisheries industry hasn't really come back as it was back in the 70s or 80s. They were seeing with brown tide back then. But do you see that coming back to Peconic Bay? It seems like fishermen have to go further out.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a couple of things, right? I think taking the long view, farm-raised aquaculture is the only thing that's going to feed people into the future. The wild catch era really is fading into obscurity. Number 2, and that's a good thing, right? There's some negative connotations to farm-raised fish, but farm-raised oysters are only positive. We do not, they extract extra algae, so we don't take anything out of the environment. We put seed in, we take out the large oysters, and there's multiple positive benefits from oyster cultivation. So people should be eating more and more oysters. Also, I have to tell you, the commercial sport fishing in my opinion, has really denuded the fish population.
Mm.
You know, you have these guys going out here with 6-pack licenses. They put 5 guys on that boat, and they each get their limit every day, twice a day.
Of big fish.
Big fish. Yeah. You know, that you just, the fish don't have a chance. Fish finders, all the sonar and the gear that these guys use, the fish don't have a prayer.
Yeah.
I don't know what the solution is that, except for more cultivation of foundation species like oysters. That would then, and that's the only thing that's going to enhance the fish population to keep up with the stress that's put on it. Because I know when we first came here, the opening of fluke season was early in May, and there would be 100 boats right behind our oysters. Now there's one. Yeah. There's just no fluke left here.
We used to see bluefish schooling.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, you know, fish were more plentiful.
And those horseshoe crabs.
Horseshoe crabs.
They used to be everywhere.
You don't see them at all. Blue claws.
But I think with the seahorses returning and small fry.
Yeah, the small fish, the eelgrass, these are very positive signs that something good is happening and can happen in concert with the commercial aquaculture. And, you know, so we're very optimistic about what can happen in this.
Which is why we're expanding.
Yeah.
You continue to see, like, there'll be more growth and...
It's just good for the environment. It's good for the people. It's good for the community. There's a lot of restaurants, you know, oyster this, oyster that. It's
good for the young people
it's good for. I think
you can go out there and work. I mean,
not a negative thing.
Any young person wants to come by and work, they should knock on our door. Plenty of work. Plenty of work.
Nobody does.
Nobody does. That's another whole discussion. Why no one knocks on our door looking for work. And we pay well.
Yeah, I used to put signs up here. I quit doing that.
The high school,
I used to charge
library.
the high school, the local high school, the administrators. You know, do you need kids?
Football coaches.
Outreach program.
Nothing.
Nobody.
But there has to be people working at these other oyster places.
I'd say most of the staff is illegal immigrants. Okay, nothing wrong with those people. Whoever wants to work hard, they're in it. You know, I admire people that work hard.
Yeah.
Why the kids locally don't want to do it? I mean, well, let's be honest. They get out of school in the summer. They can go be wait tables and make much more money, right? And it's an easier job. You know,
it's not.
This is a dirty job. It's
it's not dirty. Just buggy.
You get
cold,
dirty. Yeah.
Stuff in the water like to bite you.
Yeah. It's requires a lot of
repetitious.
Effort.
Yeah.
Which is why we do it.
Did you think you would ever be, just thinking about your previous job, did you ever think you'd be growing oysters?
I remember when we started working, I was like, this is work, but it's not like work.
Yeah. You don't have the stress of,
thinking.
Phone call. Night and day phone calls. Like, software is a very high stress job. This is stress on a certain, like tomorrow we got to run 1,000 oysters into the city or whatever. That's some stress, but it's very manageable. Doesn't take a negative effect on your body or your organs. Whereas here now we're outdoors all year, and then one day we were delivering in Tribeca, and I hit the brakes. I said, "Look, Isabel, there's a cryotherapy spa." This was like November, December. I said, people in the city are paying money to get cold, and, we get in the cold water every day. So we think it's healthy. I think it's healthy.
Yeah. And then I usually ask people, just looking ahead, it can be separate from the business, the oyster business. Just what are your hopes for the future of the North Fork, or even the future of the Greenport and its community down the line?
Well, what's interesting about oyster farming is I thought that when we had an oyster farm raising 2 kids and had a buyout, that we could just kind of hold it down and live in our little island. But we have we had to fight an international trade agreement with Europe to import infested herpes-laden oysters. I'm constantly going to village meetings talking about runoff, and I'm writing. We become little letter writers, dredging. Endangering environment with dredging. So it's just, we actually somehow had some influence on an international trade deal. The two of us, Mom and Pop, and in fact, people were saying Mom and Pop don't, criticizing us for fighting this legislation. So you just can't.
Yeah, you can't disappear. And we're the canary in the minefield. We're that fragile creature that depends on absolutely clean water. You can't sell it unless the water's totally pristine.
Won't
right?
grow, will die.
Won't go, or else they won't allow you to grow it.
Yeah.
Right, to sell for consumption. So it's up to us to speak up, and we're the ones that have to speak up all the time. Well, that's. It may sound like a good idea, but, you're going to pollute the water. Everybody says they're for clean water until it, negatively affects their little business.
The village run off here. What are you doing about this? And it's not very.
In terms of runoff from just
storm
drains and people.
That asphalt desert of a parking lot they built over there.
That's millions of dollars.
I must have written.
Where's all the runoff going?
Before they did it, I wrote hundreds of letters like, you need to plant trees, you need to use permeable pavement to absorb the water. And no matter how much runoff they say it's catching, make permeable pavement.
They claim they're putting dry wells around. Well, you can see what the dry wells did at the end of 4th Street. They don't work at all. The water table's so high there, the dry wells don't work.
It would just be so great for the village. I'm going to be the first village with...
And it would be cooler. You'd walk across there, it would be...
Yeah, you're making an asphalt
it's hot. It's crazy.
There's a desert over there. Yeah. And move the ferry or move the bus back towards the street, etc., etc.
Do you really need a
a
waterfront bus stop?
So now I'm trying to talk to
make that
museum,
into more of a park, right?
I'm trying to tell the museum, maybe you guys can try to make your environment.
The softer the shoreline is, the more grass, more plants, the better it is. Get that bus stop away,
And just that kind of.
So that's just one
flat barren.
little.
Well, yeah,
just the grass with the fertilizer and all that, just right up.
Oh yeah.
Well, all the oil and your tires, all that is going to drain down. It's going to go.
Make a park.
It's going to overflow these dry wells and go into the water.
Put some fountains in to catch the stuff, and do something ecologically green. With the environment.
There's a state mandate to clean all this up, and all the private property owners have to follow the state law, but when it comes to the municipalities, I can't do it.
They don't even answer my letters.
Yeah, everybody talks a good game.
Yeah,
when it affects their pocket,
green.
That talk just disappears.
So that's unfortunately the side of oystering that you have to care about because it's your crop.
Yeah, because if you don't,
clean water is everything.
Yeah, if the water's not clean, you don't have a problem.
That's all we care about.
That's right. And if the water's clean enough for us, it's clean enough for every resident in the village to go swim anytime they want. As long as we can operate, everybody's got good water. But when we get run out for dirty water, you got a mess on your hands.
We fortunately have good flush. Yeah. I think that's what the village depends on, good flush.
Yeah, proximity to the ocean.
It's everything. Oil slicks, got to call up the various government officials in the middle of the night. If there's an oil slick at 11 at night, just because the office isn't open doesn't mean the oil slick isn't there. Yeah. And by the time they get to work at 8, they're like, oh, well, and I'm like, but I got these photos.
Yeah.
It just goes on and on. Like, what's that smell?
Yeah.
And
but that's the main thing.
I never thought you'd have to be so involved.
Yeah.
I don't know what dirt farmers, how their life is. I think it's not as traumatic. I don't think it's, well, maybe it is, but it doesn't seem as sensitive to the environment. Because you can, like a cow, you can kill and bury. you know, if it's got a disease. But if an oyster gets herpes, oyster herpes,
then it's in the wild environment.
It's in the water, and it goes
you
virulent.
can't clean the water.
Like all of Europe has it, all of Australia, China. We're like one of the few places that don't have it.
What have they been able to do anything in Europe or in the other countries?
What they do is they try to breed resistance, just like the disease that affected us in the 60s and 50s called MSX. So they take if 90% of the animals die, that means 10% live. Now you take those 10% and you breed those, and you repeat that year after year. So over a decade or two, you do get a disease. We don't have a problem with MSX anymore because of selective breeding in hatcheries has bred out a disease-resistant animal. So, they're in the process of doing that, but that you're talking, a decade or two to accomplish on a more viable, commercially viable volume.
When we first started growing oysters, we knew nothing. So we used to go to France and visit farmers and talk to people, hatcheries and such. And we visited one oyster farmer, and he showed in Normandy, and he showed us these bags of dead baby oysters from the herpes. And we went to Ireland, actually fairly recently, and they have a lot of machinery to grade out the dead. Because, how do you separate out 90% of your dead? And they had piles, like 2-story piles of dead shells.
And then a semi comes every other day to remove them.
And they asked me, what did you do with these oyster shells? And I said, put them on roads, put them on land. And they said the government won't let them.
Because they're so
contaminated.
Yeah.
And that's what the United States government wanted to import. Yeah. Those same oysters with herpes.
Yeah, people eat them live in the shell. Well, they throw them overboard.
It doesn't take much.
That's it. It's in the water. Yeah. Never get out.
So that was our big campaign. That took years of we were ostracized.
Well, we had some help from Congress.
We had Congressman Zeldin.
Lee Zeldin, when he was
took our call.
Yeah, he was always helpful.
Wrote letters to the USDA. Yeah. It was very nice. Everybody else wouldn't.
Nobody else even cared.
Yeah.
So he's always been a good guy in our book. Well, it's not just, I'm not saying he's because he's a Republican, because Bishop. Before Bishop came over, Tim Bishop, he's a Democrat. He, supported aquaculture. I do think that the support of aquaculture crosses all parties. Everybody's for it.
Yes.
You can't really see any real negatives. It's just, how many people are going to get out there and do this work,
And I think the government's trying to be supportive.
I do think
they streamline some processes and treat us like farmers now. When we first started, aquaculture was not considered farming. So now
you had to convince people that aquaculture was agriculture.
We're farmers. That was my first fight.
Yes.
We are farmers. I can't leave. Everything dies if I leave. Yeah. But
maybe February they hibernate.
That's not true. They had a
we did that.
Polar Arctic. Mike said, we can leave.
We went to Italy and we quit paying all the tuition. All the kids had graduated. First year, we're not paying all that exorbitant tuition. Went to Italy for Christmas and New Year's. They had a polar vortex. We lost a ton of oysters.
My neighbor said, you should have seen your stuff. It was all blown out because there was a west wind. The whole thing was blown. He was like, you couldn't have done anything anyway. There
was no water in the bay. It blew out of the west, 70, 60, 70 knots for 3 or 4 days. It's what they call a blowout.
It was pretty bad. Like Steve Clark knows this because we're always asking him. He was like, what could I have done for you?
You should have called me from Italy. I would have gone and cut your lines, dropped everything.
Yeah.
You probably would have. Or sent some workers over.
I didn't. Well, whatever.
We didn't know.
That was so anyway. So February is not that great either.
Well, now we always sink them in the deepest part of our property, so we learned that lesson.
Yes. And you mentioned just for the future, the water and the environment is important. Was there anything else that you have, or that your hopes for the future of the North Fork?
Well, I don't think you're going to keep people from coming here. So that is a problem. I think that,
it's kind of like it's been discovered.
Oh, yeah.
The IG
I think what?
You see the IGA?
Yeah.
Somebody told me they had dogs in there.
Yeah, there were people in there with their
With
little
their little
pets.
dogs.
Yeah.
I think what has to happen is the town of Southold has to take a cue from the village of Greenport and from what the village of Greenport did over 100 years ago and build a sewer, and the town of Southold needs to do that.
Mm-hmm.
They've got this fund, for that they're taking tax, the
CPF.
Yeah, instead of spending, I really don't, people want, they're historical, this and that. No, I want clean water.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a clean water advocate, and the town of Southold needs to step up, build sewer plants, and lay pipe.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to Al Krupski multiple times about this. Al's a great guy. He's a farmer, but you want to clean water. You want this bay to stay clean, and you want to have a job for young people. Get out in a boat, raise oysters, and you got to have clean water. And the way to have clean water is to have sewer systems. And people are going to come, and you can have you can support
High density.
High density. Greenport's getting low. Okay, so you have you have a sewer in Greenport. All the high density is here. That's why you can have open lands and all this fund and buy land and keep the farms open. So the town of Southold needs to step up. River has a sewer. Shelter Island needs to fix their sewer. Their sewer is awful. They really need to upgrade their sewer. Spend some money. Don't just rely on the septic tanks. Don't do it. You can see Islip Up Island. If you've seen a picture of the Great South Bay from the air in the summer, you will be horrified. That's all Suffolk County sewer systems, septic tanks. And they are devoting more money to building septic tanks around Islip and Patchogue. But, Southold needs to step up and follow Greenport's example.
And Greenport had a sewer system, in the 60s?
1920s, 1930s.
It started.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike was a trustee and he got money to fix up something.
Yeah,
Electrical
we got $8
plumbing.
million. No, for the sewer from when Obama was first elected. It was actually it was Congressman Tim Bishop that got that money for this village. Okay, he walked it through and got us the approval. There was a program that the Congress had passed, but we got the money because of Tim.
But also, without Greenport supporting high density, you wouldn't be able to have open farmland. So Mike tried to get that money from that fund to Greenport, but that he never got what was kind of flawed.
I don't know. I think Southold needs to use it to build sewers. Use that money for something that will benefit everybody. Not just one or two farms or one or two. A lot of people. There's a lot of this land that they take off the tax rolls and nobody goes to it. It's empty all the time. It's nice to have fallow land, but you've got to accommodate the more and more. If you don't accommodate housing for the more people that are going to come with remote work, the quality of life that's here. They're going to come, and you've got to prepare yourself for it. And the sewer is the answer because you can have higher density in the hamlets with sewers.
Yes.
So that's another.
Mattituck should have a sewer. Southold Town should
lost cause.
It's going to happen. Let me tell you, it's going to happen.
Also, what Mike keeps saying also is that we're going to get an electric train.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, what is that noise?
That's another thing that really used to
We have the
drive me nuts.
diesel.
And they idle 2 engines during the season.
The idle is, why can't I can take a box, we FedEx a lot of oysters and we ship air freight to California, right?
Yeah.
Why can I take a box of oysters in a styrofoam with their gel packs, take it to any airport in the country and ship it anywhere? But I cannot put a box, there's a train that leaves the village of Greenport at 10:30 every night, completely empty every night, goes in to, the new pen, right? And I work with the developers of the Hudson Yards and Monaghan Station, but the Hudson Yards project, the related industries, they love this idea. I said, we'll send boxes of oysters. The farmers will send boxes of vegetables in at night on that empty thing, that empty tray. It goes right to Hudson Yards. You take it. Thomas Keller was going to build. He was curating all the restaurants. He was going to put a Long Island Farmers Market right there. No. The Long Island Railroad killed it. Oh, we're not. The union said, I'm not picking up those boxes.
Oh.
We do this. We don't move freight. You know, we don't have enough freight and volume to run a freight train. You know, that's 10 car minimum. Okay, you're talking 1,000 tons at a time. We don't have that out here.
Yeah.
But we have enough that you can supply a Long Island farmers market right in the heart of Hudson Yards, would benefit every farmer in this county. And
So now the train.
the train, those guys have got to wake up. That train is empty. We'd pay them.
My goodness.
That empty train, I'd pay them $5 or $6, $7 a box. They'd make money.
So that was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh.
It hasn't happened.
No.
Yeah.
The train station used to be where they store the oysters, I think.
Yeah, that was the old freight depot. The freight trains used to leave there full of oysters.
Mm-hmm.
Freight train has 10 cars. Each car holds 100 tons. Two of those would leave every day. 2,000 tons, 4 million pounds of oysters left this village every day.
Mm-hmm.
They used to
Every
put them in
day.
barrels and shake them.
Yeah, it's quite an industry. You got to admire the people that built this village.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to admire what they accomplished. Tremendous achievement. And, you know, we have inherited this and we should capitalize. This is a really industry that can provide nutrition, you know, good health, jobs for people, and clean the environment. How does it get any better than that? Does it?
Definitely. And then I think I usually just ask at the end if there's any last minute things you'd like to say, discuss that we haven't touched on.
What is your audience for?
It's mostly the North Fork.
Oh,
Okay.
well,
Well, you know, come out.
come out. We do tours.
We do tours.
Well, I mean, it definitely.
Call us if you want to buy oysters. Arrange ahead of time. We don't keep out in the cooler. We keep them in the water. We can press a button, and they'll be. So if you arrange ahead of time, you can buy oysters from
We
us.
really recommend eating oysters and
Eating them, cooking them. I strongly recommend people to cook their oysters and eat.
We're trying to move from the appetizer to the entree because
Yeah.
you know it's like, why can't we be down on the entree?
Yeah. Well,
Why are we up in the appetizer
Right.
happy hour?
let's get down in the menu. You know?
I mean, the protein is good.
Yeah.
It's fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're starting to sell a lot of roasting.
Yeah.
We have pizza restaurants in town that have the
Famous chef Mark Forgione at
We have
Peasant.
pizza ovens or
Frank DiCarlo, who was here.
wood burning stove. They're starting to roast oysters, and they're very popular apparently.
Very popular.
So it's always
And the bigger oyster, if you roast a tiny oyster, there's nothing there. You get a bigger oyster, now you got something.
so we're trying to sell bigger oysters.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
We encourage people to eat more oysters and come and take a look. Get in your kayak, sail by, you can go right past us. You know, watch out for the ospreys. There's a lot of them around there.
Mm-hmm.
Stay out of the eelgrass, but it's, you know,
Stay
it's
away.
a beautiful
Stay away
thing.
from this.
You know.
You're welcome.
You know, but you're welcome to come and take a look anytime.
Definitely. Oh, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today and share your story and having this wonderful business out here. So thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you for inviting
for
us.
the library. We love
Yeah.
the library.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 212 with Mike and Isabel Osinski. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.